Hey everyone, thanks for coming out today. My name is Spiro Skensos. I'm going to be the moderator for Intro to TV Writing. And I want to get started to introduce you to these awesome panelists up here. We're going to start in the order in which they were written. Ted Sullivan is a TV writer and producer. Most recently, he served as co-executive producer on Riverdale. Previously, he wrote on Star Trek Discovery, Supergirl, Revenge, and Law & Order Criminal Intent. He's also directed and produced videos for the 2008 Democratic National Convention, the environmental political action group Global Green USA, and fundraisers for the Performing Animal Welfare Society to rescue animals from private circuses and zoos. Please welcome today. And down at the end is why Shireen Razek is a South Asian, Trinidadian, Canadian, Muslim American drama writer with an affinity for science fiction, fantasy, and supernatural stories steeped in social justice allegory. Born in Canada, mostly raised in Texas, and a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin, Shireen started her professional life with a career in advertising that took her to New York, and then ultimately to Los Angeles, where she came to pursue her dream of writing for television. She's an alum of the CBS Writers Mentoring Program, and now has over a decade of TV writing experience in multiple genres. Most recently, she was co-executive producer of Vampire Academy for Peacock. Shireen is also a co-founder and co-chair of Think Tank for Inclusion and Equity, a member of the board of directors for the Writers Guild Foundation, and a Writers Guild of America West mentor. Please welcome Shireen. And right next to me is Melissa Blake, a television writer-producer of one-hour dramas and single-camera comedies for broadcast and streaming. In the past 2 decades, she has worked on a range of series from nearly every genre: Xena Princess Warrior, Heroes, Sleepy Hollow, Criminal Minds, Suspect Behavior, Wicked City, One Mississippi, and The Wilds. She's developed and sold original and adaptations to production companies and studios. When not in a writer's room or on set, Melissa can be found engaging with the next generation of talent through her work for the Loyola Marymount School of Film and Television, from which she received a bachelor's in screenwriting. She serves on the Dean's Executive Council for the top 5 film school, as well as the university's Board of Regents, and is a mentor in the Big Brothers Big Sisters Women in Entertainment program, which provides college prep, support, and scholarships for young women in underserved LA area high schools. And last but not least is Ray Utanarshik. He is a TV writer producer. He's a Michigan native, go blue. And like any good Asian student, was pre-med at the University of Michigan for 3 years. Much to his parents' dismay, he switched tracks and graduated with a film degree. Ray broke into the business working in production on commercials, music videos, and features. He was a writer and executive producer on DC's Legends of Tomorrow. He's also written for Person of Interest, The Tomorrow People, The Flash, and Supergirl. He is an alum of the Warner Brothers Writing Workshop. Please give them all a big welcome. So a little housekeeping to start. I know we'll probably have a lot of questions. There will be a Q&A section. Let's remember to get right to our questions, and please don't reference your project's details if you have a question about something that you're working on that you wanted to ask the panelists. Also a reminder that this is a spoiler-free zone, and our panelists cannot talk about specifics about shows that they're working on. And for legal reasons, please don't ask them to read your script or pitch them your script. I just have to say. I wanted to remind the panelists, and we don't have any mics, but remind the panelists that please speak into the mic so that the panelists, since we're being recorded. With that behind us, let's jump in. All right, who in the audience has written a spec of an existing show or an original pilot before? Great. And who is here because they haven't written one but they want to? Well, this is the panel for you. All right, how many of you here have applied to writing programs? All right, excellent. And then how many of you are speccing a show right now? Excellent. All right. Well, let's just start with, just jump right in and talk about panelists. What do you want to read? A show spec or an original spec? A spec pilot? Does it matter if you're reading, and it doesn't matter if you're reading someone who's going to staff for the first time?
And I guess it's to me. I'll take it. So back when I got in, all they wanted wanted to read was specs of existing shows, right? They wanted to see that you are able to emulate a voice, structure, narrative structure, all of that, and be able to churn out their show. Now, and then over time, that changed a bit. But still there is a world where a spec of an existing show will come into play. And it's largely in a lot of the network writing fellowship programs, because when you go through those programs, ideally and largely, when you're through with it, they will employ you on one of their shows. So they definitely are the folks that want to know you will be a right fit for one of their types of shows. But largely original pieces, that's what you need to also be churning out, and the fellowship programs require them to now, in addition to a spec. And some of them have done away with specs entirely of existing shows, but you will want to definitely showcase what you're able to do without the parameters of someone else's show, and they want to know that you've got fresh ideas and a unique voice. So all of the above will help out, but definitely spend a lot of time thinking about what it is that you want to create and pour your heart into.
I know that a couple of us up here have been in some of the writers programs and have written specs before. Can you guys talk about like the importance of, like, let's say you write a spec today, even though people might not be reading specs that much. What is the importance of writing a spec for you as a newer writer?
I think, can you hear me? I think the importance, especially for people who haven't written a script at all, speccing an existing show helps you work within the parameters of the show. And it'll help you also understand how to emulate somebody else's voice, like Melissa said. And it's oftentimes, speccing an existing show is actually easier. I mean, let's just be frank, it's just easier. It's easier than writing a pilot.
Yes.
Pilots are probably one of the, if not the most difficult thing to write. And the fact that that's what you have to write as a young writer to get in is really tough. So start by speccing shows, because that'll help you hone your craft and then graduate to writing a pilot.
Right. I mean, I can honestly say that I learned how to write television by watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that was my very, very first spec, because I was a huge fan, and I literally took episodes and just beat them out. Like, this is the first scene. Buffy does this. That's second scene. And then I noted the act breaks. I noted, like, 25 minutes in this happens, 40 minutes in whatever this happens. And that's basically how I learned how, the machine worked, right? When you watch network television. And I was actually validated by that, because I was very lucky through a course of events where I was actually, the spec I wrote, which honestly is the first thing I ever wrote as TV-wise. I still think it's probably the best thing I've ever written. There's a certain level of, I don't know, fearlessness when you don't really know what's going on and you're just kind of going by your instincts. I was lucky enough to get my spec to Mutant Enemy at the time, which is something you're not supposed to do, so don't follow that. But I ended up getting a meeting with a development person over there, and he literally took my script and he was like, "You came really close. Like, this is exactly what we do." And then he kind of showed me how we really do it. He showed me behind the curtain and was like, "This is, you did this. This is kind of what we do." But he's like, "You came really close for someone who didn't know what they were doing." So my point being, which to what everyone else is saying, I think copying an existing show, whatever it is, streaming, network, just follow that and see what they do, and you kind of see how they put their story together.
And I just have one thing to add, which is it took me 3 spec pilots to get to a good one. So give yourself permission to write one and then go, okay, that didn't quite work, and then just don't keep reworking that one. Move on to the next one, because you learn something. I think you learn more with failure than you do success. So just keep generating new specs, and then you'll find out how the patterns kind of lay out, and you have to learn the patterns before you can break them. So don't start with the bare, start with structure before you deconstruct.
Right.
And P.S. on that, quotation marks for failures. Because every failure is every script that you write is gonna improve your writing. Like you were talking about, you wrote 3. I think I wrote like 13 till I got good. And that's, I think, just really important for everyone to remember, especially people starting out, is that it is hard to learn the format and to get up and running. But once you do, you're there.
Right.
All right, so when you all are reading a script to consider, let's say for staffing, or you're going to want to make a recommendation for a writer, I know a lot of you have been on genre shows. Are you only looking to read genre samples? Like, what excites you? What will make the script stand out from the crowd? Let's have that kind of conversation.
One thing I'll just say is I'm more interested in just seeing a good story and good, clear characters and point of view than someone who is just kind of writing for the exact genre that we're writing for, because you want someone to come into the room with their own life experience and perspective that's different. So I just look for authenticity. I look for dialogue that crackles, that isn't like entire page-long monologues, and someone who understands, and also someone who kind of has a basic understanding of, well, you can't cut from Egypt to New York to then go, like someone who understands I'm creating a story for TV that is producible.
For a genre script, for me especially, because for me genre is all about talking about things in allegory. So one of the things that I look for in a genre script in particular is, what is the author, what is the writer trying to say? What are they talking about? What is the messaging behind it? There's something deeper to it than, ooh, this is a cool world. So I'll just be frank, Babylon 5 is one of my favorite shows, and so that show had so much to say.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that, when we're staffing shows, no matter what the show is, we know that we need writers who are strong in a variety of different ways. So, I'm gonna want a strong, comedic writer on a genre show. I'm gonna want someone who's, absolutely incredible with action sequences. I want somebody that has like the insane out of the box conceptual ideas that we all love in a great genre piece, but and someone who can write heart and just character drama so beautifully. So those scripts that come to us for that, those largely aren't just what you would identify as a genre series. And there's been certain intervals in which showrunners and agents and everyone in the industry would want to read plays, actually. Because, what a perfect, well, first of all, yay to not have to read maybe the same thing all the time, and the length potentially that some of these scripts can be. But what a wonderful way to see somebody's complete unburdened sort of imagination at play, like just in a box on a stage, and how characters really interact with each other in this person's point of view. So those kinds of things. So don't get yourself into a box. Let us find who you are by just putting out like what is flowing out of you in general, and we're going to find that and love it and find a way to utilize that in whatever it is we're doing.
Right. I mean, I think like on top of that, like going off what you're saying, in the Legends of Tomorrow room, I think there were only 2 or 3 of us that really read comic books and grew up with comic books. Obviously, Mark Guggenheim, who's one of the creators, and Greg Berlanti, but like the rest of the writers, me included. I mean, I grew up reading them, but I'm not the one I don't have that encyclopedic knowledge that a lot of people here at this convention probably, or in this room. What we were looking for, as far as writers were concerned, were people who could tell stories with heart, or stories with emotion, or that's had something to say, something that moved you. So, and it's something you're going to want to focus on when you're telling any kind of story. Anyway, even when you're pitching in a room, I know we're probably getting a little ahead of it, but like when you're trying to get a point across, and you want a certain story point to come across and to survive the process of being in a room, the best way to do it is like, it comes from an emotional place. So like, you know, I think, like I said, like the scripts we looked at when we were looking for new writers, were always, they were almost never genre, they were never genre, and we never got like a superhero script or anything like that. It was always like a story about their sister, and
Like the genre is always the metaphor.
yeah, exactly. So I think whatever you feel like you need to say, and however you want to say it, I think is probably the best version of whatever script you're going to write.
I just want to add one other thing, which is, you know, I come from Star Trek and I was a Star Trek fan. Before that, a writer's room is like the bridge of the Star Trek. You know, so like you've got a captain and you've got Spock and and I'm usually McCoy who's drunk and cranky. But like everyone has a different role. So even on paper, if you don't think like I can't apply to that or I'm not going to write for that.
Yeah.
No, everyone can't be Scotty and everyone can't be Sulu and everyone can't be Uhura. Like we need one of each. So it's really how to think about it and pursue it and pitch yourself as that aspect, that specialized crew member.
I think that's well said. Also, I just thank you for working with us. We're short on mics here. I feel like it's a Zoom room where you can only speak when the other person is finished. But I do want to highlight some things for people in the room who are considering writing or in the midst of writing. Some of the ideas that have just been brought up today have been authenticity, allegory, having a voice, and knowing what the story is behind the story that you're telling. And I just think that those are really interesting things, important things for people to consider as you're moving forward with your scripts. All right, great. So as we're moving forward in our scripts, how important are the first 10 pages?
You want me to start?
Sure.
Yeah,
The first 10 pages are extremely important, but it doesn't mean that you have to start with, you know, John McClane, you know,
Right.
and, you know, shooting up the place. The first 10 pages, really, for, you know, especially for people, showrunners who are reading your scripts, it's about establishing your characters and getting you to love those characters. So then when John McClane is running through the building and shooting up everybody, you understand what he's doing and why he's doing it, who he's doing it for.
I mean, I would say, yeah, I mean, be focusing on character right away and getting that up and running, and also in that first 10 pages, they get a sense of what your writing style is. I mean, I know for me, like, I read a couple scripts where, like, it's just the paragraph description where I'm like, wow, like this, I've never heard a Sky described that way before, and that I can see it and I can taste it. You know what I mean? So it is super important to grab that reader right away and get into character as soon as you can, but like literally it is like that first sentence, like you gotta really think about like how you're opening up that script.
Yeah. Great. All right, something that I also want to talk about was the idea of write what you know, because I think that can be misconstrued or misunderstood, especially by newer writers. So if we could talk about that for a second, to kind of tell people what you think write what you know means and how it can be beneficial in your script, whether it's a pilot spec or a spec of a show.
I think there's a confusion these days is you're only allowed to write exact incidents that you've been a part of. But I think write what you know is more about write about the emotions you know about and the experiences you know about. Like Vince Gilligan doesn't know what it's like to be a high school teacher dying of cancer who then becomes a meth dealer. But what he does know about is that desperate feeling of powerlessness as someone who struggled in the industry. So what he's tapping into there is not the specificity of his actions, it's the specificity of his emotions and how it affects your marriage and how it affects your relationship with your child. And that's why a very specific story has a universal appeal. And so I think when you're trying to just emulate another movie or another TV show, your story becomes just cards that are overturned as opposed to having a point and a perspective and a theme that is enlightening the reader or the viewer when they see the episode.
To jump in, like theme is everything. Like theme is your whole show, right? And the importance of theme, if you all can want to share more thoughts about that and how you use it in character or structure or storytelling. but at the core of everything seems to be the story that you want to tell, right? Your worldview.
It's a short leash. I'm on. This is probably a good thing. But that's fine. Yeah, no, theme is crucially important. And something that, you're wanting to tell stories that viewers can relate to universally. So exactly what Kevin was saying of writing about like the emotional component of it, not like the specificity, but I think it's so important for people to think about and really hone what their personal story is, and be able to pitch yourself as well as your ideas, because that's the thing. Like you'll find, a lot of people ask, okay, we hear a lot about, I'm looking for a unique voice in a script. Well, what the hell does that mean? What is voice? This is not an auditory experience on the page. And really, it is about your unique style, as it lays out on the page, even like prose and whatnot, and how you write dialogue and things. But largely, people also get very concerned about, I need to be strict and like just write genre shows and just write certain types of things, or like I can't do a feature and a TV show and a play, like that's just crazy. But like, if that's what you want to do, please do that, because that is going to show up. What you're passionate about is going to show up. But what will come across in all of those when you diversify your portfolio, if you will, is theme. You're going to find that you write a lot of the same themes, and it is largely influenced by your personal stories, your life experiences, and there's things that you're drawn to again and again. If you really look over numerous projects by certain writers, you'll see like, oh, like he's writing about his issues with his father over and over again, and it's all like in a very different, very interesting way. There are so many of them that are writing about their fathers. But these things will emerge, and I think it's important to get to know that about yourself, because when you're able to communicate that even in a meeting, even if you're pitching yourself for someone else's show, be able to identify with at least one character in that show, and it's largely the theme that the piece is about too, and you can kind of tell them what it is from your background that is, so drawing you to this, and that immediately communicates to them, oh my God, this is the person to write this,
Right.
because
She's giving you the best advice you're gonna hear today. Have an elevator pitch of yourself.
Yeah.
That's the best advice you're gonna get all day. Just pitch yourself as if you were pitching a script.
Yeah.
Have that ready to go.
That's right.
That's
Yeah, no,
the
thank
best.
you. Cut me off.
Yeah.
I'm rambling and I know it.
Mic drop, Meghan.
There was a moment, I think I was a writer assistant on the show years ago, and one of the writers like, Ray, I want to help you out. What kind of writer are you? Who are you? And I had no answer. I mean, I thought I did. I was like, oh, I kind of like science fiction, and I love Buffy, all this. Like, it was like there was a rambling answer that meant nothing to anyone, especially myself. I think you're right. I mean, I think it's thankfully it does feel like a lot of writers are talking about, like, no, the real focus is the emotional truth of your story, or the emotional truth that you like to talk about. I mean, Shireen came up here and literally said, like, this is what I like to write about. These are my themes. It's like, that's exactly what you need to know. Now I do know that about myself, thank God, but after a decade or so, writing and talking about writing and being in writers' rooms and fighting for stories, and I'm always like, why am I fighting for this point? Oh, because this means something to me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think what everyone's saying, I think really the most important advice is like, get to know who you are as a writer. If you don't know what that is yet, try to figure it out, explore, and you will come to, I know with every story I write, and that I'm trying to develop, I'm drawn to. They all have things that I'm like, oh, I like this aspect of it, and I'm going to bring that out in the meeting or in when I write the pitch. Like this is a story it's not clearly about that, but I see that in here, and I'm going to bring it out. And that's what they're drawn to, is that kind of writer who can see these things, right?
Right, something that means something to you.
Absolutely. It'll mean
All
something.
right, great. Let's take some audience questions. Anyone have any questions? Yes.
So, as you were.
I'll repeat it so people can hear it all around too.
Super, thanks. So, as you were describing, I'm so sorry, I already forgot your name.
For me,
What-
Ray.
Ray, thank you. So, Ray, as you were describing what you were reading as far as, really beautiful sunset, and that you could really enjoy the description, how much description is too much? Or like, what's the right amount to convey?
So the question for those who couldn't hear it was, when you are writing, how much to convey in your description lines, in your action lines in a script, right?
I mean,
Okay.
it's clearly a taste thing. I mean, someone may have read what I read and said that was total garbage. I mean, I doubt it because it was so beautiful, honestly. And actually, I'm specifically thinking about, it was a very short-lived TV show called Rubicon. If you guys remember, it was on AMC. Gosh, I don't even remember who wrote it anymore. I'm embarrassed. But it was literally those first 3 pages of that script were so beautiful. And not much is happening until that 3rd page. But it's, I think it's a taste thing, but I think, be judicial. It's not a novel, so don't, because it's not about the written word per se, but like, have you put enough words on the page to paint a picture in the reader's mind? And then once you've done that, move on. You know what I mean? Does that help? I'm not sure if that's super helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
If it's not a quiet place, give me some dialogue. That's a very cool script, by the way.
Yeah.
And but boy, was that risky
Yeah.
to write that way. But
One exercise that you can do is write the long version and then figure out how to do the concise version.
Right.
Because TV is very much about, especially writing TV scripts, it's about being concise.
yeah.
It's also about providing a blueprint for other people to add onto it. So like, if you're writing every move and turn and every little detail, you're not really giving the other departments who will become artists, who are artists and have done this for a reason, and will come up with ideas way better than yours. So it's about showing, I always say it's not a novel, it's a haiku. And the haiku is supposed to evoke an image and evoke an emotion without defining it like Charles Dickens.
If you want to say that someone's got in this room and it's got an Eames chair and a serenade table, you don't need to say the room has an Eames chair, a serenade table, and all these other postmodern.
Unless it's a
just
plot
say,
point.
You can just say it's like mid-century modern.
Exactly.
Right.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Let everyone else do their work, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Other questions back there?
Yes, I want to know, how close can you come to a true story without having to pay somebody else or get yourself in trouble?
All right, so this is kind of borders on a legal question too. So I don't know how many legal eagles we have up here, but the question's about how closely can you write about a true story without getting into any legal trouble, right?
I mean, yeah, it's tough. I mean, is it, even with, so I've worked on some series that have closely resembled or kind of pulled, obviously ripped from the headlines type of shows, can do it, but you're really needing to leave a lot of the super particular things that are identifiable out, if you're not going to get the rights to something. And particularly, some of the things I've worked on have been, about actual criminal cases that involved, a series of murders, and you're dealing with people where there are victims' families that are still around, and so you obviously need to be as delicate as possible there. So it's, in those types of cases, if you don't actually approach somebody and get sign off on that, get some rights, then you need to change enough about it that it could be any other, and unfortunately we live in a country where this happens all the time, so it's not like, anybody would identify it as like, well, that's clearly this killer from this area. But yeah, it's, try to do your due diligence, and see how far you can get to, whoever like the rights holder might be, certainly if it's somebody whose life rights you're trying to get. Yeah, I don't know, what do you guys?
I would just say one thing, it's a little like porn, you know it when you see it. So if you're feeling in your gut like, this is kind of close, or you're trying to excuse it in your mind, then you're probably like, that's probably too close to the truth. Like Succession is clearly about the Murdochs,
Right.
but the plot points aren't the
Right.
Murdochs.
Perfect.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
A good question. In the orange and then in the back?
Sometimes, like, I guess, as a writer, you kind of like make pilot ideas, and then you're like, I only want to just write this show for like ever, like you don't give me that in your brain. I just kind of like step away from that to let yourself write more than one pilot, so you're not just writing 7 scripts of the same story.
Oh, this is an interesting question. I had a student who was dealing with this, had written like 6 episodes in a row. So the question's about, if you write a pilot that you really like, what do you do next? Do you keep writing all the episodes? When do you stop writing on this pilot? Given that you haven't sold it and no one's bought it, this is just for you, right? Okay, great.
I think it depends on if your intent is to do it for yourself, or if the intent is you want to be a writer in TV, like if you actually want to work in TV. Because if you want to work in TV, you just have to tell yourself, okay, it's time for me to write the next script because I need to have a larger portfolio for my agents to be able to sell me. If it's just for you, then keep writing it because you're enjoying it.
Yeah, I would say invest that energy in writing a fantastic show Bible, or like, a series pitch document that is going to have sort of the character arcs that you see for the next season or 2 of this. So like, you're gonna have the ideas for all these exciting new episodes coming up, but instead of having to take all the time that it will take to write each of those scripts, get it down in another format that is really helping you sell it ultimately. And it's something you're going to need if and when you do end up selling that script. So do that, and then pivot to the next idea, because you're full of them. Don't worry about that. Don't think you wrote one and you never have another idea again. Possible.
Great, yeah, that's a good question, answer. Yes, over here, and then we'll go over here.
You guys gave great advice about how to elevator pitch for yourself. I think everybody struggles with how to present themselves. Can we impose on one of you maybe to give us the elevator pitch? Your writing style? Because obviously you guys are good at it.
Oh, on the spot. Okay,
Ray is exempt from this.
no, Ray has to do it. Has to do it again.
Thank you so
The
much.
question is would someone up here share their elevator pitch for introductions?
Well, I was just like, not to put her on the spot, but Shireen basically gave us one,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
I mean,
just,
yeah.
when you introduce yourself.
Then I'll just ask Spiro to read it.
That's the
To be
best.
honest, I never remember.
It's a good one. This is exactly what we're talking about too, so that question is perfect. Shireen Razik is a South Asian, Trinidadian, Canadian, Muslim American drama writer with an affinity for science fiction, fantasy, and supernatural stories steeped in social justice allegory. So basically, to me, if I didn't know you, and I work with her on TIE and in Writers Guild stuff, so I know her well, but if I didn't know you, I'd be like, oh, this is an interesting background, and also like the various backgrounds, when you read it, like there were some people who kind of laughed or giggled at that, so it's like, that's just, you wrote it in such a way that it is, smooth and fun and not like dramatic, but you're a drama writer, and you've got an affinity for telling stories that are about what's happening now and that are a metaphor for what's going on, and to me that's meaningful.
And I have bio-jealousy. Thanks a lot.
Jealous.
Oh, no, but I was going to say that, and I didn't do my homework, and I'm the kind of writer that like, I have to think about things for a long time. So like, I'm gonna be ready for you next time. I would say this is the kind of thing, exactly what Shireen wrote, that you want to arm all of your advocates with. Now, some of you may not have reps yet, right? So you're like, well, anybody you talk to about writing, who might know a person and know a person with arm them with the things that they're able to speak on your behalf about. Tell them about a couple of things from my background, for example, that have actually helped me get jobs because I let my agent know about them. My family lived for a period of time in Alaska. My sister lives on a very remote island there. That was sadly in the news 2 weeks ago for a mudslide. Yes, it was horrific. My agent knew that about me and was always like, God, you need to write something about Alaska. Jeremy Renner's company came over, was with WME, and had something that they wanted to tell about this woman based in Alaska, on the island next to my sister's. And she was like, I think I have the perfect writer. And I went in and I was just like, okay, here's exactly everything I know about this island, and by the way, I know people who knew that lady. So it was kind of a shoe-in.
They hired you, right?
They did. Yeah. So, just to say, make sure, think about everything that you've done in your life that, you might not think is unique, by the way, but it kind of is. And this is a small world, by the way, that we're living in Hollywood. And there's a very small group of writers. You're gonna stand out for the things that you've done, that I certainly haven't done.
And also, don't try to pretend you're something you're not. Be authentic in your pitch about yourself, right? So I used to hide stuff about my past, and then once I because I came to this later, I was 38 when I started writing. So I worked as on a lobster boat. I put up drywall. I drove a truck. I was through illegal raves. I was, and so once I started saying that in the meetings, not trying to pretend that I've been a TV. That's how I got on Law and Order, because they were like, "Oh, great! Then you have lots of stories." So don't just
You
be
wrote a rave episode.
I did write a rave episode, but just be authentic in your pitch and own who you are, because no one else is going to have your experience, and that experience. And if you show that you have ideas and life experience, they will want that. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're on a show like where I started, which was 22, and we had a case of the week. So
That's really great what Ted said. We had a question over here next, right? The woman in the room.
He asked my question.
Oh, he did? You did? All right, then we have
Yes.
the blue jean shirt, and then behind you, and then Raven.
Oh, did you guys pick that? Who's first?
Blue jean.
Oh, okay, great.
When it comes to action-based scenes specifically, is how much of the kind of action choreography tends to come from the page, and how much of it tends to come later when the stunt team steps in, or a director?
So this is about, the question was about scripting action, fighting, battle scenes.
This is all you.
I mean, I did Star Trek with Michelle Yeoh, so you don't really write. You just go and then Captain Giorgio gets into a fight. So it depends a little bit, because she goes, no, we're gonna do this.
Yeah, I mean, I found over the years that a lot of it depends on what show you're working on. In general, I would say that's what Ted said was basically what it. I mean, what we would do, it was always give us the feel for the fight, give us the tone, and obviously, if it's done right, action is really about character. So you're really emphasizing what is that character going through? Are they getting beat down? Are they losing faith? Are they, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? So you don't say oh, there's a roundhouse kick here, and then you punch him in the face, unless it's really, really specific. And it means something, it comes from a story. But in general, because you have a stunt team and all that, they're gonna kind of do their own thing, but what you want to do is guide them. You say, okay, the stunt team, this is a fight about them thinking they're gonna win at this point, and then they're actually gonna lose here. And that's as much as you kind of give them. And you give them a little bit, but not too much, because they're really gonna kind of do their own thing, and then you're just kind of wasting.
I would, just to jump in real quick, and I think specifically for your question is, if your script is not a script that's in production, but you're writing it as a sample,
Right.
then I think focus on the beginning, middle, and escalation, all's last moment of that fight, right?
It's a character, right? It's a character.
Your action scene is a silent movie, so have a story for the action. Don't do all the details of the action, but just take them on the journey of what the action will make you feel.
Exactly.
Great question. And then behind you in the jacket.
All right, hi. Based on the beginning of this conversation, it seemed like if theoretically you had a writer who had like a feature written and had representation and a couple of original pilots written, it seems like your advice would be like this writer should be doing some spec scripts of shows that already exist in some
So this is
capacity.
a question about your portfolio. If you've written a feature script, original pilot, should you write a spec script as well?
And if that is true, and if that is the advice, do you have more advice in terms of like, is it better to work on like a procedural script or something else, or could it be whatever?
Right. Okay, so I think unless you are going out for one of the fellowship programs that requires a spec of an existing show, or unless you're really starting to get into writing and haven't quite found your footing, okay, then definitely like jumping in on an existing show, trying to, do a script, replicate kind of their formula is a great, at the very least, exercise. But read a lot of scripts. Read a lot of scripts. Please go use the Writers Guild library, which is fabulous and open to the public. You do not need to be in the guild to use our library. And you might run into a lot of members whose credits who are there, pulling out scripts of other shows that, just to see like, how did they write a scene about this? Learn from the masters, right? So do that kind of research for your originals too. And in terms of choosing what to write next, it really should be whatever the idea that you have dictates, whatever it wants to be. Like, this story is kind of gonna guide you. I mean, I don't wanna sound new agey and like, oh, the muse is better. But don't feel like you must now write a procedural, even though that's not in your DNA at all, and God, you detest that. No, cause that's gonna show up. That's not gonna be a good sample for you.
And also procedurals aren't something that most people get excited about reading, so people assume that you'll be able to write procedural if you're on one.
That's great.
That's true.
Having done a lot of procedurals.
Yes.
You have Shrink, and then we'll have over.
I wanna plug the Writers Guild Foundation Library
Yes.
strongly.
Yes.
Also, you can find them at wgfoundation.org. And also, to go back to the question about writing your personal statement, writing a bio, if you go on their website, there's a section called, I think, the Resource Center, and they give you some advice on how to write those, so I highly recommend that.
That's great, yeah, definitely use that service. Yes, I think this might be our last question. We might have one more depending on what you ask.
Okay, thank you. So if we have a writer that's just moved to LA, they feel like their portfolio is ready. I know there's a mention of fellowships and agents representation. Would you say that writers should put all their energy toward those two avenues, or are there any other avenues to try to get your work seen and read and pitch yourself without being a pest and crawling under back?
This is a great question. The question is how to get your material read, who
Right.
you reach out to when you're getting started if you don't have the connections.
One thing I'll quickly say, there's one more, try to get a job as a writer's assistant. Writer's assistant is a very fast way, usually, not all the time, I've been with some pretty evil showrunners, but
Different panel.
yeah, it'd get me drunk, but like, if you get a job as a writer's assistant, usually if the showrunner isn't concentrated evil,
Yeah.
you will get a script and you will get a credit, and maybe even staffed. On Riverdale, all of our writer's assistants got ultimately on staff and promoted, so like, it's a very fast and effective way to do it, so that would be the three-pronged approach.
And yeah, to that end too, be looking at all the support staff roles
Yep.
in a writer's office, because those writer's assistant jobs are coveted, very competitive. I mean, it's as competitive as getting on staff.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, even like any job, honestly, in the
Yeah.
industry,
Right.
Agreed.
any job on a TV show, I mean, we've had assistants come over from post-production.
Yes.
Me.
We've had. Yeah. Well, there you go, yeah, you can talk about that, but yeah, we have a lot of people.
And I was an editor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was an editor.
Once again, I'm gonna plug the Writers Guild Foundation.
Yeah.
Because they have a program that trains you to be a writer's assistant and a script coordinator. So look that up on their website. Also, another avenue, and I say this for a lot of emerging writers and new writers, agents are really testy, and they don't like reading new writers.
Yeah,
They basically say, once you get your first job, then come talk to me. Look for a manager first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also go work at those agencies, because guess what? You're gonna have access to all of the scripts that are actually selling, and know what the marketplace wants. And you can like backdoor yourself into getting an agent, and a lot of support staff roles go to people that have worked in agencies, because we know they can handle those testy agents. Yeah.
That happens often. That's a great comment. I also want to remind everyone that this recording of this will be up on my YouTube channel, Spiro Vision. You can go there. I have like 5-6 years worth of interviews with really awesome EPs like these folks here. So check that out. That's going to be it for us today. We are out of time. Please give a big round of applause to everyone up here. Thank you so much for coming out.